US President Donald Trump is on his way to Davos, Switzerland, as his rhetoric over Greenland intensifies. His arrival this Wednesday slightly delayed after a minor electrical issue aboard Air Force One. European leaders have been firm in making their reservations known, but Trump has been doubling down. At a news conference before leaving Washington, he said he would have meetings on Greenland in Davos and was optimistic an agreement could eventually be made. For more on this story, we can bring in our international affairs editor, Angela Diffley. Angela, good to see you. The White House says that Donald Trump will be focusing his speech later on today on the economy, but there's no doubt that the biggest issue on European leaders' minds is what he's going to say on Greenland. What can we expect on that front?
We have heard Mark Rutte, the NATO boss, speaking this morning, and he made a number of significant points. Donald Trump yesterday, before leaving the White House, held this impromptu press conference. And in that, not for the first time, he said, well, I know that we would go to help other NATO countries, but I question whether they would ever help us. Mark Rutte said this morning, of course, Europe would help the United States. That was something he said he felt was important to say. The other thing he appears to be trying to do is organise some kind of off-ramp for Trump, whether Trump will take it. There has been a lot of talk about the idea that when those 8 countries sent, often in very small numbers of troops or military personnel to Greenland last week to conduct reconnaissance exercises, in fact, to examine where any security gaps might be. But there has been some talk that Trump misunderstood that and thought it was an aggressive move to make. And so Rutte is sort of offering him a bit of an off-ramp, suggesting that that was a bit of a misunderstanding. Nothing was meant by it. It was just a reconnaissance exercise. Whether or not Trump will take that, because the Greenland thing has been about so many things. It has also been about the fact he wasn't given a Nobel Peace Prize. It is also about minerals. It is also about the fact he says we cannot be sure it will be defended unless we own it. We don't know what is behind his obsession with Greenland, but Mark Rutte has certainly said that. The other thing Rutte has been saying this morning on Greenland, there's a lot of worry about Ukraine, because suddenly Ukraine, which might have been a much bigger focus in this Davos meeting, is pushed down the agenda. They were to sign a prosperity plan, European leaders and Trump. It had been more or less agreed. It was about the reconstruction, the economic side of reconstructing Ukraine after any peace deal. That is all on hold at the moment because of all of this. Russia, again, must be delighted at developments. But that's where we are right now. We are all holding our breath, wondering what Donald Trump will say.
This seems to be the most serious transatlantic crisis in decades. So where do things stand when it comes to the US and Europe relationship for now?
Yeah, whatever happens, if this crisis is de-escalated, it will only be until the next one.
Yeah.
And the damage done is very, very real. The swaggering, brutal attitude of the United States towards its allies has left European leaders, and we heard yesterday from Mark Carney, horrified. And personal relationships do matter in international relations. And on the one side, you have had those who try to flatter and accommodate Trump. I would firmly put, I think everyone would, Mark Rutte in that camp.
Top of the list, yeah.
Absolutely, always keen to try to stay on the right side of Trump. Also, Britain's Keir Starmer. There's been a lot of grumbling in Britain, people saying that the King should decide not to go to the 250th anniversary celebrations of the United States later this year, as a gesture of the United States, of Britain's irritation with Trump's behaviour. The person who's been singled out above all appears to be Emmanuel Macron. Trump has particularly again and again singled out Macron. Mocking his accent, imitating him in Congress.
He shared a text message yesterday.
Sharing the text messages. Then last night he said, after Macron had declined for France to join this board of peace, which has sort of morphed into a sort of new international peacekeeping body run by Donald Trump, which might undermine the United Nations, some countries fear. He said, well, look, nobody wants Macron there anyway. He's not going to be around for much longer. This sort of disparaging attitude will not easily be forgotten. That is the reality. And what Europe needs to decide is whether this is just about the impossible attention-seeking personality of Donald Trump, who is so difficult to manage.
And difficult to read as well.
Difficult to read. How do you respond? But in the future, when Trump is gone, how much should Europe, and Canada is also asking itself this question, reorganise its architecture, reorganise its relationship with the United States, or is this just a blip? The feeling is that this has been a very serious wake-up call for Europe and that they must drastically reduce their dependency militarily, economically, in every way on the United States.